The first thing I need to do if I need to figure out the value of these variables is I need to figure out what shape I'm dealing with. And so let's look at the evidence of the tick marks in order to classify these quadrilaterals. So I'm noticing that both of them have 4 sets of right angles, meaning right away I know that this is at least going to be a rectangle. Rectangles are the quadrilaterals that have all 4 congruent right angles. So both of these are at least going to be a rectangle. I want to try to be more specific though if I can, and so what I notice in the first diagram, not only do I have 4 right angles, but I've also got diagonals that are perpendicular to each other. So using those 2 pieces of information, the fact that I have 4 congruent right angles, and also diagonals that are perpendicular, what that tells me is that this first figure is going to be a square. It's the only quadrilateral, if you look at your properties chart, that has both of those figured out, or both of those checked off. Now in the second diagram, all I was able to find were the 4 congruent angles, the 4 right angles, which tells me the most specific name I can give this is going to be a rectangle. So I've gone ahead and classified them. Let's go ahead and do our second step where we actually solve and find some missing information. So the square has a lot of properties that we can use. As you're looking at your properties chart, you see almost everything is crossed off. So let's go ahead and start with, I don't know, let's start with y, I suppose. The y, it's kind of hard to tell, but the y is set up on these 2 pieces of the diagonal. Well, one property that a square has, like I said, it has many of the properties, are that the diagonals bisect each other, meaning they cut each other into 2 equal pieces. So each half of the diagonal has to be equal to the other half. So 2y has to equal 10, meaning that y has to equal 5, because diagonals bisect each other. You may want to make a note of the property that you used. So diagonals bisect, and don't just say that, because we have 2 of those, we have diagonals bisect the angles, which we'll use in a second, and diagonals bisect each other, which we just used here. Oops, each other. Alright, we're also asked to find x in this first diagram, and I can see that x is pointing to not the entire right angle, so I'm not going to say that that is equal to 90, but instead it's pointed to just half of that angle. It's pointing to that smaller piece right there. So since I know I have a square, I have 90-degree angles, and again, one of the properties a square has, it has many of them, is that diagonals also bisect the angles. So I'll use that property to find x this time. So diagonals bisect angles, meaning they cut them in half. So that 3x plus 18 is not equal to 90. That 3x plus 18 is equal to 45, half of the angle. Now I could solve that, and that wouldn't be too hard to do. Or I'm noticing that they've also labeled 5x up here, which I believe is the half angle, although hang on, I'm going to check real quick. Yep, sorry about that. I hadn't made my notes in advance, so I just wanted to check something. So that 5x is also pointing to this half angle. They didn't draw the arrow, so I just wanted to double check that. So I could also write the equation 5x equals 45. Either way, I should get the same answer. This one's easier to solve. If I divide by 5, I get 9. What I was doing when I paused the video a second ago was just checking this other equation to make sure I got the same thing. So when I subtracted 18, I got 3x equal to 27, and dividing by 3, of course, gets me 9. So either way, I'm going to get the same answer, knowing that I'm dealing with half of the angle. So the 45 degrees, not the full 90. For your rectangle, let's go ahead and also find x and y. This time the x's and y's are on the sides of the rectangle. Well, one of the properties you have for the sides of a rectangle is that they're congruent to each other. So x plus 31 has to be equal to 5x minus 9. And again, if you want to write y, you can say that opposite sides are congruent. Now that's true of all parallelograms, not just of a rectangle, but that's the property I'll use this time. So there's going to be one of the equations I need to solve, and we'll do the same thing to find y. Now, all the sides are not congruent to each other. That would make it a square, but opposite sides are congruent. So my second equation I'll write is going to be 4y plus 5 is equal to 2y plus 35. I'm working with sides. This would be a great time to pause the video and try to solve those 2 equations on your own. Otherwise, let it play through and you'll see my work pop up, and you can check your answers. So there you go. I got x is 10 and I got y is 15 when I set opposite sides equal to each other. Hopefully you got those same answers. Otherwise, go back and double check your work or ask me a question in class.